Welcome to Discovering with Dr. Deb. Our last season, we were discovering the Enneagram with Dr. Deb, and it was packed with a lot of information while also being a lot of fun to talk about and explore the Enneagram and why we do what we do. So go back and check out those episodes if you haven't seen them already. Here we are in season 2, and I'm going to be focusing on trauma and using EMDR therapy as a tool to help process trauma. My co-host for this season is psychologist Dr. Christie Sprowls from Austin, Texas. She has traveled all over the world to provide EMDR in humanitarian efforts, and she has also trained clinicians and providers in EMDR therapy. So get ready, let's dive right in and talk about trauma. Hello, welcome back for another episode. I am here with Dr. Christie Sprowls. So today we're going to talk about myths about EMDR. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And I've heard some really crazy ones. Actually, I was just thinking yes, I've heard some. And then you've heard some too, because you've been doing this since its inception. So I'm sure you've really heard a lot of other kind of crazy notions about what it might be. And so I know the one that I've heard the most often is that it's a way for a counselor to manipulate what's going to happen with a client. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. But what are some of the myths that you've heard? Common myths maybe about EMDR, maybe even some crazy ones.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start with that one because I was going to make a joke. Honey, follow my fingers. I want you to take out the trash.
So it's hypnosis. Right?
Well, okay, but it isn't hypnosis.
No, it is not hypnosis.
No, there's EEG studies and everything that show. This is actually a myth that EMDR is hypnosis.
Right.
And it isn't.
It is not.
The EEG, and it was a study done by Bagnini, shows that the brain lights up differently and is present for what's transpiring in the session the whole time versus hypnosis, where they go into a theta state in different states of the brain, and they are actually not focusing on what's actually happening.
Okay. There is hypnosis. Some people do use that, but it's not EMDR. It's not what we're doing in EMDR.
Yes, that's not what. And hypnosis is fabulous.
Sure.
I'm not dissing hypnosis, but one of the other myths is that you can actually implant false memories.
Okay.
The only way that you can actually implant false memories is to do bilateral stimulation at the same time you're doing hypnosis. Okay? And again, when I am teaching EMDR, I tell people, bring all of your strengths, bring everything you have learned. We want you in the room. It isn't like you have to, not do hypnosis at all, because that's crazy, because it's fabulous. But those are the only times when you can actually implant something. Now, what we tell people too is we can't put anything in their brain, right? That isn't already there. Their brain, and we don't do that anyway, but we can't put anything in, nor can we take anything out that the brain does not want to release. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
To be able to sit back and to watch exactly where do the memories go? What leads to this belief about themselves or whatever it might be? But it is not hypnosis.
Right.
And we're not, making the husbands take out the trash.
Oh my goodness. Wouldn't that
Would have been handy.
I know, wouldn't it be neat if it did? And I know when, just talking a little about EMDR, so when I'm doing it, I shared this in another episode too, that we don't insert anything. No. Because the thing about EMDR is it allows the brain to go where the brain needs to go for healing. I know they're probably going to hear this a lot over the next year of our episodes, but we don't want to interfere with that. And we don't really know what they need or where their brain needs to go or what healing actually will even look like for them. So we insert nothing when we're doing EMDR with a client. That's exactly right.
It's like, people have to get accustomed to this actually when they're learning about EMDR and how to do it, is not to be talking while you're doing bilateral stimulation.
Yes.
And it will humble you.
Yes.
Deeply, because you'll realize I was thinking it was going in this direction and it didn't. It went in a whole nother direction and actually was way more profound than what I had imagined it was going to happen.
Oh, I have so many stories of that too. But you're right. It's humbling because it helps you realize like they really have, and we say that a lot.
Yes.
And I know client counselors believe this, like that the client has within them the power and what they need to heal. And we're not the conduit. I mean, for that, it's within them. But with EMDR, like we're truly not, like we're really just allowing the bilateral stimulation to allow their brain to reprocess the event in a healthy way.
Correct.
Right. And we really don't. And it's kind of easier therapy.
It is.
Because I'm just going to start the ball going across or letting them tap, and they're doing the work. So, when I look at my schedule and I've got a few EMDR sessions coming up, I'm like, oh, God, I got to kind of sit back because I'm not going to insert anything. Now, you're right, though. It can be tricky for those of us that did, talk therapy for years and years. And then we get trained in EMDR, and when they say something, it's like, well, that's profound. Or I need to, do you remember? We're not going to say anything. Mm-hmm. So that took a little adjusting, for me.
Yes.
But it wasn't too hard. It was, like I said, it's kind of like, pressure's off. Let them get what they need to do. And the other thing, too, another myth I hear, and I think this is planted by maybe some people that aren't correctly using the 8 phases of EMDR. One and done.
Oh, yeah.
One EMDR session and I'm cured. And I'm like, that's a myth. Like, it could take, I think the longest I've had is a client, we did 16 sessions on one memory, but I've only been using it for a few years. But you've used it with people and use a year or more on a memory. And so this one and done is a definite myth.
Yes, that's correct. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of thinking about, this should take 3 sessions. Mm. And they read that out there. Somebody's told them things like that, or they come in and they'll say, look, I want this done in 6 sessions. And I will tell them, listen, there's no way that I know how long it's going to take you.
Right.
Because again, we go back to that idea that your brain is as unique as your thumbprint. And by the way, if you run across somebody who will say, absolutely, I can take care of that in 6 sessions, I tell them to run.
Right. Get another counselor.
Yeah, because they don't really know what they're talking
right.
about. Because they're giving you a number. Crazy.
Yeah.
Most and many take just maybe a handful of times, depending on the amount of trauma that this individual has had, right? Mm-hmm. Their complex trauma, it could take multiple years for you to get through what you need to get through. So that's just, yes, a myth. Yeah. And the other myth is I get to start doing bilateral stimulation the minute I get the first session that I meet you.
Yeah.
Right? Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it?
Right. We're not doing, they will say, we're not really doing EMDR because we haven't done that. And it's like, we have, because there are 3 phases before we get to that actual bilateral stimulation phase. Right.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where, just this thought just jumped into my brain, where it gets to the point where you get so good at this that people don't recognize you're in any kind of phase. And one of my patients called and said, Dr. Sprowls, did you know there were 8 phases in EMDR? And I was just like, well, yes.
In fact, I did know that.
In fact, I've been teaching for, over 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Yes, I happen to know that. But it was just kind of funny because she didn't realize what I was doing, right? And I said, no, I'll show you what we've done. So that she would know that she was getting the correct EMDR.
Right, because she kind of thought, I've been cheated. I didn't get all the phases.
She did that. So
that's cute. I love that.
It was good. And let's see. Okay, so they are also, this is a myth is that it's a brand new type of therapy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And truth be told, it was started in 1987.
Okay.
And Shapiro just came. I won't go into that story right this moment, but
no, but this is a good time to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Shapiro was walking in the park.
This is Francine Shapiro.
Yes, Dr. Francine Shapiro.
Right.
And I feel very fortunate. I got to work very closely with her in her home for many, many years.
And she trained you personally.
Yes, she trained me personally and chose me personally to become a trainer for her, in particular, all over the world.
Right.
I got, we had a conversation, actually. I don't know if that's okay. We talk about this, but we were
course.
at Harvard going to Bessel van der Kolk's studies. I mean, in his conference.
And he's known for The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score.
Right.
Yeah.
That's his seminal work there.
But this was many, many years ago. We were having dinner with him and with Francine and everything. But I also took Francine to lunch with Carol York, my friend. Anyway, long story short, she asked me, what do you want to do with EMDR? Anyway, I told her, well, I grew up. My father was in the Foreign Service, and we fed starving people all over the world. I would like to travel around doing this all over the world. And she goes, oh, okay. Well, you will be one of the first to be trained to start working in, other countries.
Humanitarian efforts?
Humanitarian assistance.
Right. Wow.
So I spent most of my life actually going all over the world and teaching people how to use EMDR, but also treating the population that was there. And in fact, sometime I'll have to show you tsunami pictures. But okay.
Right. So you're saying, so Francine Shapiro she created it. She was walking in the park.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she was walking in the park, and something disturbing had come across her mind. And actually, she had cancer at the time and was recovering, but she noticed her eyeballs were going at a diagonal. And when she was thinking about something negative and kind of anxiety producing, and she wasn't doing it on purpose, the eyes were moving back and forth, she became less anxious and less disturbed by the thoughts that were coming up just naturally.
Right.
So she thought, well, let me try to see if I can do this on purpose. So she thought of something else that was making her anxious and wiggled her eyeballs, and she goes, whoa, that worked again.
Okay.
So then she went home and everybody she knew, she'd say, sit down, think of something anxious and wiggle your eyeballs and tell me if that doesn't make it all better. And at the time she was working with Wolpe. And so they thought there was desensitization, and that's all that was. But there is more to it. There's reprocessing, which means reconfiguring the brain and the memories and actually moving towards health. So that's the Shapiro story. It's been around a long time. It is one of the most researched types of therapy that there is, period. Initially, and this is another myth, it's only used for trauma. Right. Yeah. But now, what we've discovered, and I alluded to that in one of our other episodes, is that we've discovered we can work with so many other things: anxiety, phobias, depression. Actually, we'd established the first treatment that there is for phantom limb pain.
Okay.
That's a story I have too, but won't go there. And anyway, so
eating disorders, chronic pain, grief.
Yes, grief. Oh,
childhood
so
experiences.
Everything. I mean, basically, it just sort of like open up the doors, even medical issues. And I've been successful in working with people. In fact, I'm going to be doing a talk for the National Kidney Association.
Oh,
yeah, talking about how do you take care of people who are either terminal or in pain or going through a really difficult time physiologically, right? So it works on a wide amount of things, and I honestly think we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg as to what's possible.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, that was one that I had heard too. Like, it's just for trauma, and it is, of course. And we talk about triggers and all of that. But like you said, there's so many different things we can use, and so different mental health issues, but also chronic pain, things within the body, stress, gut health, things like that a lot of times people wouldn't think about that. And so, it's not just for trauma. I think too, a lot of people associate EMDR with PTSD and PTSD with like war veterans. And that, but it's like, try to break out of that shell. It's really got uses far beyond that.
It's kind of amazing the types of things that can bring on a PTSD. And, again, we talked about this in another session, but the things that might happen that you don't really put those two things together.
Right.
Until you start noticing your own behavior of, startling easily or whatever. But Here's another one I have. So EMDR might cause me to go crazy.
Oh, I haven't heard that, but I could see how that would be a thought people that have.
Yeah. And no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Again, you can't put something in that
Right.
isn't already there.
Right. I do hear people that will say they're kind of afraid, like, they've stuffed for so long that we're just going to like open the can. It's all going to come out and they won't be able to get it all back in the can. And my first response is, why do you want it all back in the can? Mm-hmm. But secondly, it doesn't happen like that either, and so I think that's part of it too. We don't just have EMDR. We also have EMD.
Yes.
And EMD little r. So it opens up different amount of channels of association. If we just do EMD, we're keeping it pretty contained. So we don't just open it up so that we can safely, and maybe not safe, but for them to feel a little more emotionally safe to kind of go there. So we have different ways of using EMDR to kind of dispel that myth. It's not that they're going to go crazy. It's not like that we're going to open it all and just like go, all right, see you next week. Have a good one, because I think that's a fear. I don't know if that's a myth as much as it is a fear, but there are different ways to use EMDR to help kind of manage the distress.
And in the training, you learn all the ways in which to, where you can apply different types of protocols within the EMDR, the 8 phases and everything like that, so that you aren't doing that.
Right.
And but that is sometimes it'll make me go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Then we know how to deal with it, because I teach people how to deal with that. Like if somebody gives you, I'm afraid I'm going to go crazy, what we can do to assist them to ready them for the actual work.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of that is in, like you alluded before, one of the earlier phases.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're doing a little psychoeducation and we're doing a little trauma history and helping prepare them for the EMDR. What other myths? Yeah, what other myths are there?
This is another one. Let's see. I will have to talk about all of the details of the trauma at length.
Yes.
Okay.
I do hear that one. Mm-hmm. Like if there's been a rape or if there's been like veterans. I mean, I've had some that I don't want to go there. Like I've never spoken this to anybody, those kinds of a thing. So that is a common fear a myth about EMDR.
What's really cool, in my opinion, about EMDR is that particular myth is really incorrect. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that, yes, we can work with people like veterans. Mm-hmm. We can work with people of different cultures that may be shamed to mention a particular response or a feeling. This is a very rich world that we live in. But the beauty of EMDR, one of the beauties of it is that they don't have to tell you anything. There may be little guideposts along the way, but they don't have to tell you the blood in the guts, right? And I use that because I know the military personnel often will tell me, I don't want you to hear this because I don't want this for anyone to have to live with this, knowing that this existed in the world, or happened, right? And so, or they don't want to get overstimulated by it themselves. Right. So, nope, don't even have to go there. All you have to, we can set up the memory in the way that we're supposed to, and start bilateral stimulation, and we go easy. We titrate it to their needs. And many people would not do it if they thought that they had to tell you all this.
Yeah. Now, I do know some will say they've had other modalities used with them where they do need to do that.
Oh, yes.
There are other trauma therapies where they do need to do that. But that's not true for EMDR.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would be intimidating and scary and prevent people from doing it.
I think so too. And if the person, in my opinion, wants to go slow, our job is to go at their pace, not our own. Right. We're not in a hurry.
No.
And we can take our time preparing them or doing whatever needs to happen so that this can be a safe as possible type of therapy to be able to use. And yeah. So there you have it. Have you heard of any other myths?
No, I think those are the ones I've heard most often. And I do think the one that stands out a lot for me is the one where, they're one and done, or they may come in and sometimes they have the understanding, which is a myth, that they're going to come in, we're just going to do some bilateral stimulation, not just that it's one and done, but like, we're really not going to assess their overall mental health.
Yes.
and so I guess that's another one too, because we do look at like dissociation and and their overall mental health to just kind of make sure they're ready for EMDR.
That's right.
We don't want unstable folks to become more unstable because we've started something and haven't practiced it ethically with them, So there's an element of, preparing your client for EMDR before you jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really all about them and
Right.
keeping them safe.
Right.
And having this be a positive experience. And is it hard at times? Absolutely. Is it devastating at times?
Absolutely. Yes.
Does it stay that way? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But there are going to be times where this is hard work. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
I mean, again, it's not so horrible if there's only been one trauma in your life, car accident. Again, I've used that a lot. But it's a little harder when you're digging around in childhood.
Well, I guess here's another myth I just thought of. People think I'm going to, I have one client and I was like, what are you doing? I try to plan ahead. Like, what is the rest of your day going to look like after we do this EMDR session? Because they're going to be heightened and they need to have some self-care after an EMDR session, and informing them that, we've gotten your analogy. They're going to be on a train going from Austin to Amarillo. Now, I've told you, my clients are like, I don't want to go to Amarillo or get on a train. So we do a cruise ship.
Yes.
And we're going from LA to Hawaii on a cruise ship. I don't even know if cruises do that. But anyway, ours are. Okay. So they've, when we leave the session, we may not be in Hawaii yet, but we're out of port. We're out at sea. And we tell them, your brain is still going to be processing in between now and our next session. And that's great. And sometimes it gets it all the way there. I see them the next week and it's like, wow, awesome. Good for you. But most of the time not. But they're somewhere in between. And there needs to be some self-care. Like, you're not going to just like leave here and go, out to dinner and have a great time. It's heavy work. Yes. And so there's got to be an element of self-care.
And it's not always like that, even if
always.
It's very interesting, but you have to prepare them for that possibility, right? And then after they have had a few sets or sessions, then they'll know
what they
some
can
of
expect.
Them leave the office skipping, and they're like, "See you next week," and they don't even think about you.
I don't think I've had anybody skipping.
Yeah, no, I have.
Yeah. Oh, here's another myth.
Okay, good.
Are you ready for this one? You have to do EMDR in person.
Oh, that's a really good one.
Yeah. Not true.
That's a good one.
Not true. And in fact, you've told me, like, before the pandemic, you were like, it's got to be done in person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like opposed to it to the highest degree. No way you can do this virtually.
Yeah. And I've never done it in person. All of my EMDR sessions with clients have been virtually.
It's fantastic. It's been an opportunity.
Yeah.
We know about the pandemic, right? It's been hard on all of us.
What pandemic?
Yeah.
Where have I been?
Behind the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes.
Yeah. But I have done, and so now there's tools. I use remote EMDR, and there's others. And I can log my client in. And, they chime in, and then they can watch the dots, and there's tones so they can hear it audibly also.
Yes.
So some that may have a visual issue, they can just hear the tones and do some tapping or whatever. But I've had so much success, and I've only done EMDR virtually. Yeah. So I appreciate that there's that option. So others in my office that use EMDR, they were doing it old school back,
Yes.
and they kind of, I don't know that they can imagine doing it virtually. And I'm like, yeah, and I've never done it in person. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to be doing a video here soon about how to do it in person, because people don't know how to do it in person now.
Yeah, no, not the ones you've trained in the last few years. So that's the last one. Exactly. All right. Well, thanks for kind of unpacking those with us. That's been fun.
I know, it is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Mythbusters.
All right. Mythbusters. Yeah. So myths about EMDR. There were several that we kind of uncovered. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode. If this content has been helpful to you, I'd appreciate it if you would please rate the podcast, post it, and share it on social media. And also post a review. If you'd like to get in contact with me, my phone is 479-561-7600, or email Dr. Deborah at anchoredhopecounseling.net or Dr. Deborah at drdebfordoctors.com. Our website at www.anchoredhopecounseling.net has some useful information, and you can also reach out to me through the website. Remember, you are enough just the way you are, and you are loved.